Did you fall out of love with your art? You used to have it, and now you don't. Well, as you watch me draw this today, learn why you started to feel that way, what the real reasons are for how you started to fall out of love with your art, but also how to rediscover your passions and interests into it, because I'm gonna go on a limb here and say this means something to you, doesn't it? Now, at the outset of why you're feeling this way and why I typically see artists start to feel really dismayed and they start to hate everything that they do and they start to go away from what they used to want to run towards, okay? It's kind of like you used to love the person that you're with and now you're kind of like indifferent towards them or you try and avoid them, okay? This typically becomes an adversarial relationship with your artwork. And to avoid that, I want to just name the demon that's really plaguing you, because it's not that you're actually falling out of love with your art, my friend. And typically what I tend to see is that a lot of artists are not disliking art or disliking making art. What they are disliking is the end product. And is this you? Do you look at your end product and you just go, ugh, or oh man, or oh, that's not as good? Or do you think to yourself like, well, it's not the way I want it to, it's not the way I need it to? Well, I just want to name what's actually concerning you, friend. And what I've learned is that it's actually this topic of desire. And the more that you combat this plague of desire, the better you're going to be and the more longevity you're going to have in this creative field. And that just reminds me of this quote by a rabbi. And he basically says that desire is a contract that you make with yourself to be miserable until you achieve the desired end product. And I remember when I first heard that, I was like, dang, man, that hits so hard. But it's so true, because think about it, right? Like, how long are you gonna wait to actually enjoy something that you're doing? Are you gonna wait until you finally get the job? Are you gonna wait until you finally achieve a certain level? Are you gonna wait until you finally get some praise up on there on social media or whatever? So the more that you wait, the more that you are denying yourself any of the positive benefits of art making in the moment and being present in it. And we're going to talk about why that's such a big issue today too. And then that also brings the topic of the fact that you're going to convince yourself that it's not something that you're able to do, and it's not something that you're able to do yet. And because of that, you're going to start to convince yourself that you're not a creative even. That's why I want to talk to you about that topic today as well. Because the more that you recognize that is the core issue here, is just how badly you're plagued with desire. You just need to get that end product to be satisfactory. The more that you're actually denying yourself all the positive benefits I'm going to go through today as to how you're actually going to want to be an artist and want to create art more and want to be more passionate about this field, because that is what you want, isn't it? But being hyper-focused on the end product is not a sustainable mode of interest for anything. Now, let me just point out what one of the worst practices, and I'm gonna say that every artist has to go through this in order to learn how horribly toxic it is. And I wanna know by the end of the segment, are you doing this too? So do you ever put your artwork up, or do you ever look at your work when you're done and just go, that's not good? Or like you're comparing your artwork against somebody else and saying, man, like, theirs good, mine bad. Well, I just want to let you know, friend, that is the worst, most toxic, venomous thing that you could ever do to your artwork. It's going to kill your spirit. It's going to kill your motivation. And I just want to reevaluate this for a second here. What the heck do you mean as good art? Now, just to go ahead and put this out there, obviously we can talk about skills, we can talk about foundations, but more than likely, friend, here's your issue, is that you're not looking at it in terms of your gains. And most of the time, I'm going to talk to you about this later too, about how to actually look at what are you targeting. And just at the outset of everything that you're going to make, if you're only going to approach every artwork and say, this will be good, and then it's not good, well, guess what then? You've kind of set yourself up for absolute abysmal failure. And I see so many artists do this all the time, especially young artists or newer artists or developing artists, is that it's just not going to look good. But what the heck does that mean? So let me just give you a better strategy for this one. Instead of you sitting down and saying, I'm gonna make this the greatest ever, I'm gonna make this a great piece, I'm gonna make this one that's gonna get me lots of likes, or this is gonna be a great portfolio piece. That is a horrible way to think about any version of artwork, okay, my friend? Instead, what I would urge you to do, and you will feel much better about it, is if you actually sit down and say, okay, I'm gonna make artwork that's going to hit these targets. Maybe you want to focus on anatomy, you want to focus on lighting, you want to focus on the mood, you want to focus on the atmosphere, you want to focus on the background, you want to focus on the characters, you want to focus on the gestures, you want to focus on the narrative. Whatever it is, you need to have an actual target. That way, you will get to the end, and even if it is not the most glorious artwork ever constructed by human hands, then at least you're going to look at that and say, okay, I hit my target. And instead, like, think about this, y'all. just gamify yourself. Look at yourself in terms of like, okay, where did my stats raise? Even at the end of that, obviously you're not level 99, but you can just see where did your stats go up a little bit. And then you can kind of feel good about yourself and say, okay, I can see myself raising. I can see myself getting better. I got a little bit better at this. It's not as good as it will ever be, but at least it's better now. So stop asking yourself to create good artwork because you're literally just asking yourself to wander around your artistic field, just completely confused, and you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Have you ever realized that? Now, what constitutes an artist? Have you ever considered that? Or let me ask you this more pointed question. Do you consider yourself not an artist? Are you afraid to don that label? Are you maybe concerned that the people around you or the people that you know, the people that you love are gonna somehow not accept that? Or maybe you just don't accept that about yourself. Well, one of the things I find a lot of times is that there's a lot of artists that don't like to be called artists, and that's very curious to me. And the reason why this typically happens, and please tell me if this is you, because I want to help you out right now. You are waiting for yourself to hit some type of a checkpoint or milestone in order to be like, yes, I am artist. So maybe you're waiting until you get a job or you create that level of a piece or you get so much recognition or you go ahead and you actually accomplish doing this thing or finishing that project. Is this you? Are you the type of person that feels like you have to hit some type of level, if you will? Again, if you gamify yourself and you're like, well, I have to be level 20 and I'm like level 2 and still gaining experience and you're not there yet. Well, my friend, here's what I need to let you know. The reason why you fell out of love is because you started to put restrictions around when you're able to enter the art making sphere. And that's not realistic. I'm gonna talk to you more in depth about that in a second and how that's not true. But let's just examine this. You're waiting for yourself to hit some type of an end goal in order to actually accept the fact that you are creative. And you're convincing yourself that you're not an artist because you haven't done the thing yet. Instead of looking at your endeavors and you're looking at your efforts and you're looking at your actions that actually do contribute to that, okay? Like just for example, right? Like you don't have to be an uber in shape and famous fitness model in order to call yourself health conscious, okay? In the same vein of thought, you don't have to also just be like Ross Tran in order to call yourself an artist. That's ridiculous. And what you're doing there is you're putting off gratification until you achieve something. And that is going to be miserable for you to slog through. And if you are that type of person, what I want to let you know is that being an artist is not an end goal. Being an artist is you being in the moment, in your studio, in your process, and just going through it. And if you're convincing yourself otherwise, friend, I just want to point that out to you. That is your construct. That is not the reality. And that is not you living the life of a creative. So no, let me just tell you, you are a creative, you are an artist, but not if you convince yourself otherwise. Now, let me tell you what thousands of artists have said and spoken on as far as what's actually helped them go ahead and reinvest into their artwork and reinvest into their joy and find their spark once again. And that's like and subscribing to this channel, y'all, because I am here to help support you, give you realistic, actionable advice every single week. And if you're down for that, I would love for you to come back to me every single week and tell me about what's helping you too down in the comments. And hey, look, if this is helping you, please share it with somebody that you know and love, because I would love to help them too. I want to positively affect as many artists as possible. And thanks so much for helping me do that. And then also I want to help you by telling you about this. So being an art educator, I hear this gem all the time, and I bet that you've probably heard it too, or maybe you're feeling this way, and that's why you kind of stop liking art. Have you ever told yourself or said out loud, I'm not creative, I'm just not talented, I don't think I'm very artistic, or like, oh, that person's so much more artistic than me, or like, man, maybe they just get something that I don't. And what I typically see along the lines of like you convincing yourself that you're not an artist is you trying to set some type of a boundary on your creativity. And what that kind of brings up is this topic that being an artist and being creative isn't something that some people are blessed with, or some people have, or some people have better developed than you. And what this kind of reminds me of, like, have you ever really sat down and thought about, there's no reason why humans are at the top of the food chain on planet Earth. Like, it makes no sense. Like, when you really sit down and think about it, y'all, We are the most pathetic creatures to ever grace this planet. Like, there's no other species that is completely helpless until the age of like 5 years old. There's no other species that cannot hunt or sustain itself until the ages of like 12 to 16. There's no other species that sits at the top of any food chain that doesn't even have any type of predatory adaptations, but we do. Why is that? It's because of our creative instincts. We are not either born with or without creativity. We are born with it. The reason why humans have ascended to the level that we have and we've taken over this planet is not because of our predatory prowess. It is because of our creative prowess, okay? So the thing I want to let you know is that being creative is a default mode. And for you to sit there and say, well, I'm not very imaginative, I'm not very creative, and I'm not very artistic, that is your conception of it. It's not a reality of it. And if you take a look at young children, okay, you're gonna find that there's no child that doesn't enjoy being artistic. But we hammer that out of ourselves, or it gets hammered out of us, usually by the time we hit middle school. And so what this typically brings up is if you are comparing your work, again, against your future self, if you're comparing yourself against somebody else, if you're comparing yourself who's at level 70 and you're at level 10, of course you're gonna feel like crap. Imagine if you were playing an MMO game and you went up and you tried to fight the level 80 dungeon boss when you're only level 23, and that might be where you're at, friend. It's not that you're not able to do it, it's just that you haven't done it yet. And again, you're combating that feeling that you're not worthy of it yet, but you are, friend. You just need to continue to reinvest and redevelop that using the strategies that I'm talking to you about in this video today. And there's a big influence that we'll talk about today too, as far as why creativity gets hammered out of us. But for now, you just need to understand and accept that you are a creative, but not if you're unwilling to tap into that, friend. Have you ever considered that? Now, let me tell you about the most popular mass serial killer that you've ever heard in your life of creativity, and it's something that all of us have been exposed to. And it pains me to say this because I am a very passionate educator, but if you didn't know this, schools are literally one of the worst thieves of creativity and thieves of artistry that you will ever meet, because they literally kill that soul in you. And one of the things that this reminds me of is that Robert Kiyosaki, if you've never read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, then I highly recommend you give it a great read. It'll destroy your poverty mindset on this. But if you're somebody that's feeling like, oh, I'm not very creative, or I'm not feeling artistic, or I don't like this, or I don't like that, that typically comes a lot, just to recognize it, from your base in schooling. And what Robert Kiyosaki says is that schools actually teach the opposite of how to be successful. Because in school, you take a test, you do the thing, you answer the question, and it's either right or it's wrong. And if it's wrong, it stays with you forever. But literally, that's the opposite of how to be a successful human being. So for you who's making lots of bad drawings, bad drawings, if you're making loads of bad artwork, if you're not satisfied with what you're doing, if you're combating that desire, if you're combating that influence, if you're combating all of your imposter syndrome and you're combating everything that you're currently going through and your negative feelings about your artwork, realize that a lot of that is because of your schooling, okay? And when you actually take a look, and what Robert Kiyosaki says is that if you actually take a look at really successful individuals, whether they be artists or they be businessmen or anything in between, they are going to be built upon not like born privilege, not born type of advantage, but instead because of the fact that they stand atop a mountain of complete failures. And for you, friend, I just want you to recognize right now, or let me just ask, have you ever even considered this, that what schools are doing generally is the general format of them is going to hammer out that creative soul in you. And it's going to hammer it out because you're going to say, it's right, it's wrong, it's this, it's that. And one of the things that I always have to tell my classes is that, like, it's not about you getting to a destination nor following a formula. It's how do you get there? What's the adventure like for you, friend? And another thing I always tell them is that, like, there's more than one way to get there. There's more than one path to take. There's more than one quest that you can go through to achieve the same exact result. But as long as you end up where you are, it's not going to be because of the fact that you're just better or you're more talented or any crap that doesn't exist like that. It's just your conception of it. But it's literally just because of the fact that you're not going to give up, because you're going to experience a failure and you're going to figure out how to learn from it. You're going to synthesize what didn't go right, and then you're going to harness it the next time around. Like, I can think of so many times I can look back through my portfolio over the last 20 years and be like, God, that was awful. Oh, here's how I fixed it next time. Or, God, I really wish I did this better. I'm going to focus on that in my next artwork. So just to land the plane on this, one of the things I would ask you to do is, instead of you feeling bad about, how you didn't get enough attention online, or you didn't create that work as gloriously as you thought it was, or how that didn't net you a job, instead, take a look at what you're doing, identify concrete things, and I'll give you some roadmaps on how to do this in a minute, and then focus on them. See your failures as opportunities rather than blockades. How's that sound? Now, on this topic of you wanting to enjoy art and wanting to like it, and you want to fall back in love with your process, but currently right now, you don't have that. You got a prickly relationship with your artwork maybe, or maybe you're starting to fall out of love with it, or maybe you're just feeling dissatisfied with it overall, right? One of the things that you might have fallen victim to thinking, and I've even said definitely on this channel, that you need to enjoy what you're doing. But I just want to make a very hard caveat right now, which is that I want to give you a very grounded reality. Sometimes art just sucks. Have you ever felt this too? And I'm going to talk to you about why that sucks, okay? And how to get through it. But overall, when you think about anybody that does anything significant in this world, there are aspects that totally suck about it. Like when you talk to really accomplished artists, there are things about their process and moments in it that they just absolutely hate. If you think about anybody that's an Olympian, their training schedule, it's going to be very rough. It's going to suck. When you think about anybody that's really scholarly and very intelligent and they're reading a lot, that sucks. When you think about somebody that's in amazing shape, right? They have to train a lot. That sucks. It hurts to go to the gym, okay? And in the same vein of thought for you though, you have to just recognize that there are a lot of moments in art where it just sucks. And if you're somebody that's falling out, I just want to ask you, at what point in your process are you falling out with your artwork? Because if you're of this opinion that oh, well, it's just not good enough, or I just don't like it, or I'm just not liking my artwork right now, why is that? Maybe it's just because of the fact that you're hitting your ugly phase. Have you ever considered that? Because every artwork enters an ugly phase. And it's typically right in the middle. And what you'll typically find is that you got lots of enthusiasm up front, and then as you go through, it tapers down, and then you hit the ugly middle, which I typically call the valley of despair, and then you gotta pull yourself back up out of there, okay? So oftentimes, what I tend to see a lot of artists do is that they lose complete motivation for it, and what used to be really driving them has completely shut down. So my friend, instead of you dumping out every single time that you hit that middle ugly phase, why don't you do this? Why don't you persist through? Why don't you work on it for a few more hours? Why don't you go ahead and point out to yourself things that you want to insert into there to make it better? And this just brings to the table this discussion of you ever hear people say oh, you gotta love the process and you gotta learn to love the journey and all this. Well, I'm just being real, it just sucks sometimes. But every great and meaningful journey has hardships along the way, and you either engineer that for yourself or you just handle it as it comes and it makes you harder. How's that sound? Now, for you being an artist, I'm gonna go on a limb here and say that you have something that you want to do and some type of project you want to put all those efforts towards that's going to be great, it's going to be amazing, it's going to be rewarding, and it's going to be something that's going to be really meaningful for other people to pick up on, right? Maybe it's a game, maybe it's a comic, maybe you just want to freelance, maybe you want to go work on a game, or maybe you want to go ahead and work for XYZ company. Tell me down below what your big thing is, because I would love to hear about it. I'm sure someone else will have the same exact dream as you can connect up with here too. But right now, you know it, and this is probably why you're starting to fall in love with your art, that you're not there yet. Are you feeling like this? Are you feeling man, it's just not good enough, it's not gonna be there? Or then maybe you're starting to convince yourself, no, I can't do that thing because I'm not good enough yet. I can't start my manga because my skills aren't there quite yet. Or, oh, I can't apply to that studio because my portfolio isn't ready yet. Or I shouldn't freelance because I'm not there yet. Or I don't think anybody's gonna buy from me. Have you ever heard this stuff? Because I deal with freelancers all the time. These are very common concerns that come up. And what I just wanna let you know, friend, is that you are letting the yet prevent you from being happy and present right now. And let's just call it what it is, y'all. That's just your insecurity, okay? It's rising, it's bubbling up, and it's keeping you from being the best version of yourself. And so the best thing that I want to let you know is that it's perfectly normal and natural for you to not feel ready yet. Everybody that has ever started anything great, anybody that's ever achieved anything great, was not ready yet. And you typically see this a lot. Like if you read comics or manga, the artist will typically go through this journey from the beginning to the end where there's a significant skill development and everything looks better. It's not just how do they make lines and how they shade and color all this crap. No, it's all about everything. Everything will evolve. Think of yourself again as a work in process so that you, by the end of it, you're going to feel great about yourself, and you need to accept that is part of the process. So my friend, I just want to let you know this. Just go ahead and do it messy and do it ugly and do it unprepared. And it is more important for you to do it than to think about doing it, than to delay doing it, than to think that you're not ready yet for it. And oftentimes you're going to take a look at your art and say, it's not good, I don't like it, I'm not really feeling this anymore. Not because of the fact that it's not worthy of it, it's just that you're not worthy of it yet, but you're never going to get to yet if you don't work now. Are you feeling this way? Now let's talk about one of the best things that artists can do. And I find that this works for all types of creatives, and I know this is going to be great for you. And again, if you're combating what it is looking like in the end product or versus somebody else, here's a great thing that I think is really going to connect with you, is that you have to look for those small sparks of joy, okay? And you need to look for those little moments. And this can be as simple as the way that lines feel on a paper, the way that you have use a couple different colors together. Maybe if you're a traditional artist, it's like how you're mixing paint together. Or for you as a digital artist, like, man, I'm gonna try out this new brush and it just looks fun. And if you disassociate yourself from the product of making artwork, what you're gonna find is that there should be a lot of little small sparks of joy. And I find that this is a really nice, sustainable way in order to bring yourself into what you're doing. I want you to tap into this. What parts of your process do you actually like to do? So for me, for example, I really like the initial coloring phases of it. Like I really like it. I really like the initial texture phases of it. It's so fun. I really like figuring out little lights. When I sculpt, I really love the initial like rough sculpting phase when it barely even looks like anything. When I'm painting, I really like just the feeling of mixing my paints, okay? It's just really fun. There's those little moments, the ones that nobody cares about and nobody talks about, and you can't put it up on Instagram and get lots of reactions from it or anything else like that. This is just you. And what I want to connect this back to is that if you're feeling like, oh, I don't like my process, I'm not feeling enough joy from this, and this just isn't doing for me what it used to, it's because of the fact that you're waiting for something else to happen instead of just experiencing art as a human experience in the moment. Have you ever considered that? And being an artist is literally tapping into the deepest, truest form of your humanity. And if you're denying yourself those like little moments that happen throughout your creative process, then you're also denying yourself your humanity. Have you ever considered that? And so tell me down below, like, what are those little moments that exist in your process that you really look for and you look forward to and you really enjoy? Now, here's another really big reason why so many creatives drop off and they lose their love of art. And it has to do with what you're getting from it, okay? And what I typically see this related to is that sometimes people will be like, Sean, you know, I just don't like this, or I don't like to do this, or I don't like working in this field, or I don't like what I'm not getting from this. Or Sean, hey, I want to do commissions, but I don't like it. And so I want to ask you, what are you making art for? Because a lot of times what I tend to see people have kind of a misaligned interest in is what that payoff is at the end. It's, I'm going to get that job. I'm going to get that goal. I'm going to get clients. I'm going to make money. There's so many artists I've spoken to over the course of my life where I'll be like, hey, why do you want to go into freelancing? And they're like, I want to make money. Or like, hey, I want to start a YouTube channel. Okay, cool. Why? Because I want to make money, or I want an audience, or I want to do this and I want to do that. And I'm like, that's the problem. Like, you are going to hate everything that you do because of simply the fact that it's not actually what you want to do. You want the after effect. You want what comes afterwards without putting in what comes before it, okay? And what this all relates to is instant payoffs. One of the worst things that any artist can do is say that they want to make art for a purpose other than making art. And this relates to, I think, any creative field. You have to have an innate passion for it. And the way that you develop it is through using the strategies that I'm using in this video for you today too. When you're developing it, like just for example, like if you're a concept concept artist, you are not the owner of anything that you make, okay? If you work for like a AAA game studio, they can't put up any of their artwork until the game releases, which is typically somewhere in the neighborhood of like 3 to 8 years of when that project actually started. So it's not yours. And then some projects are just locked under key, under NDAs, so that nobody is allowed to do it. And the reason why those artists can create like hundreds and thousands of drawings and not get dismayed and not get out of the field is just because they love drawing. It's fun for them. They've realized what their small sparks are, friend. And so if you're somebody who needs some type of big, massive first payoff that is unselfishly not about you, then that's also why you fell out of love with art. And I want to give you a really contemporaneous example of this. Like, have you seen PewDiePie's example? And I know that's a really like polarizing set of opinions. If you want to see my take on that, please let me know down below, because I kind of thought about making a video about it because I feel like it's a really great topic. It's a really great case study. But here's what I want to kind of cue you into. The man made a lot of progress, like an extreme amount of progress from absolute nothing over the past year. And he did it not with the intent of, I want to make money, I want to get clients, I want to get a job, I want to do this or that. He just said, I just want to get better at it. And that's beautiful. That's such a beautiful message, because that's like the most truest form of artistry. You don't do it for this, you don't do it for that, you do it for you. And I want to ask you, are you making artwork for you, or are you making artwork for somebody or something else? All right, so here's something that I see come up all the time in the freelance community. I don't want to expose why this perhaps is why you're not liking your artwork right now, why you're not feeling that spark of joy that you used to, why you're losing your motivation on it. And I just want to ask you, like, what are you doing? And is that really what you want to do? And just to give you a personal example here, okay? When I first got my first digital tablet, I was like fired up to go ahead and make art like all of my heroes, all my champions, okay? And I used to go ahead and say, okay, I want to make semi-realism anime artwork. And obviously, as you're watching me do this, that's not really my jam now. But that's what I wanted to do back then. And then after doing that for like 2 years, it took me 2 years to figure this out. And I said, you know what? I don't think this is me. And I started to realize through my process, and every single time that I was digitally painting, I would say, I don't think that this is really what I want to do. I don't think that this is Sean. I don't think that this is really 100% like what I'm supposed to do here. And I got that imposter syndrome, not because of the fact that I couldn't learn how to do that, or I didn't want to learn how to do that, but I just realized that it was just a misaligned focus. It's a misaligned niche. And then therefore I started to branch off more into semi-realism, and I started to branch off into fantasy. And one of the worst things that I see artists do is that they're gonna delve deep into something that they don't even like, that they don't enjoy, that they're not actually passionate about. And tell me, have you ever been pushed into anything that you thought was the popular one, the thing that's easy to do, the industry that's easy to get into, or if you're freelancing, the niche that's easy to get into? Because I'm just gonna be real, none of them are easy. None of them come quick. None of them are simple, and none of those interests are sustainable. The best one that I want to gear you towards instead is, why don't you just stick to the things that you love? And if you're like, well, Sean, I don't know what I love. Yes, you do. Let me just put it to you real simple. If you're just afraid to admit this to yourself, because honestly, let's just be real. You are just insecure about how you're going to use your time. You're not like, oh, well, I don't know what I love. Like, that's total BS. You know what it is. You're just afraid to admit it to yourself. So here's a really easy way to think about it. If you could only do one type of art for the next 10 years, and that would be something that you would absolutely love and enjoy doing every single day, what would it be? Boom, there's your answer. It's not that hard to figure out. But I tend to see a lot of people pushed into, or suggested to go into, or operating within some type of niche that they just absolutely hate. And that's probably why you're falling out of love with your art. Have you considered that? Because it literally is that simple, my friend. So have you ever felt like this? Or have you ever been pushed or suggested or been told that you got to do this, you can't do that, or you can't do this, so you better go ahead and do that, or this is the safe road, or this is the better option, or this is the practical option? Have you ever been told that, Gem, too? So if this is you, friend, let me just point it out to you. You're just operating within a misaligned niche for yourself, and that's not sustainable. Have you ever considered that? So for us as creatives, we operate from a very deep part of ourselves, and that comes from the most secluded interior side of ourselves that we don't show everybody. And because that happens, friend, you will go on an emotional roller coaster as you are an artist. And one of the things that I tend to realize, and I see so many artists really miss the point of, is that you being an artist is you developing your humanity. It is not just you doing a skill, you constructing this, you crafting that, you selling that, you attracting these people, you working for that game, whatever it is, okay? It's literally your human development, okay? Because again, as we learned, creativity is a default. It's not a mode that you turn on and off like a switch. And so to that point, one of the things that happens is that we tend to sum it up and we feel everything that we're feeling while we're creating it. And that's a beautiful part, okay? But it's also why you're not feeling like you enjoy art anymore. You tend to sacrifice your art for how you're feeling about things that are not even art related. And that's just because of the fact that every single time that you make art, it's literally an artifact of how you felt in that place and time. There's a lot of temporality about your artwork that's really fascinating. And that's why like artists like Picasso has like his blue era and the other eras that came afterwards and so on and so forth. So many artists done this too, right? And that's one of the most beautiful parts of art, but it's also why it's tough to be an artist. It's also tough to sustain yourself in this. And one of the best ways to combat that is to just see your artwork like a child. And if you see yourself as like developing your artwork just like a child develops, what do you have to do? You have to be positive about it. You have to nurture it. You have to take care of it. But oftentimes what we tend to do is we tend to neglect and abuse our artistic child because of those exterior influences, because of our work, because of our jobs, because of our spouses, because of our fights, because of our difficulties, because of our financial hardships. Every single one of those tends to influence the creative process. It's really tough for you at times to just sit down and do what you need to do and to do something that is selfishly just for you, not for any other exterior purpose, right? When you're not feeling like your normal optimal self. If you again put that to the analogy of it being like a child, you can't be like, oh, well, sorry, I can't feed you today. I'm feeling depressed. I don't want to go to your school today because I'm feeling anxious today. I don't want to go see your recital. You also don't want to snap and like traumatize your child just because you're going through a bad day at work. But curiously, you will do that to your art. You'll put it off, you'll procrastinate on it, you'll go ahead, put it away for years. Imagine if you just ignored your child for like 3 years. That's what a lot of y'all will do to your artwork or have done with your artwork too. And so the way that you best want to get around this is, again, view that like a child, view that as something that you have to rear, you have to care for, you have to be very tender with. In your exterior influences, they're gonna happen. But my friend, I want to urge you on this. It doesn't matter unless you give it power over you. Just do it. Do it sad, do it mad, do it afraid, do it anxious, do it incomplete, do it unsure, do it insecure, do it like an imposter. Just do it. Just get into it and actually produce the results, because you will never get to where you want to be by letting right now hold you back. And let me ask you how this would be for you. What would it be like if in 5 to 10 years you're in the exact same place that you are right now, still feeling the way that you are, still feeling the way that you currently feel held back, still feeling like you didn't accomplish the things that you want to, still feeling inadequate because of what you did or did not do? What would that be like for you? Because that's the reality that you're bringing to reality right now. Have you ever considered that? Kind of changes everything when you consider it like that, right? So my friend, don't let your art be collateral damage from what's happening in your life. Now as artists, we are really good at comparing our artwork, aren't we? We're gonna compare it against the people that we really look up to. We're gonna compare it against people in our classes. We're gonna compare it with people in our Discord servers. You're gonna compare it against what you see online. You're gonna compare it against things that you see in shows or in industries or whatever you wanna do with it, right? And comparison is no doubt the thief of joy. You probably have heard that before, right? Nothing new. But there's another thing that you can start to do when you start to actually feel like you have lost some level of love or any type of interest in your art making, and it's what's called positive dissatisfaction. So to contrast this, if you compare your artwork versus somebody that you really look up to, you're gonna be like, wow, they're so much better than me, and they can do this, and they can do that, and they can get this, and get that, and then you're gonna feel like crap. And another thing that I tend to notice a lot of artists do that you can now get out of the practice of is stop following so many artists with so many competing interests, with so many diverse interests that have absolutely nothing to do with you, and stop comparing your artwork against them, because it doesn't make any sense. Like, just for example, I follow sculptors, I follow 3D sculptors, I follow concept artists, I follow illustrators, I follow people that have realistic styles, semi-realistic styles in cyberpunk, in fantasy, and in all of these different interests that have nothing to do with each other. And if you're comparing yourself against literally like the casserole of different artistic takes and different artistic interests and different artistic skills, then you're setting yourself to feel like absolute crap. And that right there is negative comparison. So shift that into positive comparison and positive dissatisfaction. So what I would do is this. I would go ahead and I would take a look at some of your champions and just like go ahead and just create like a pure ref document or create any type of document that has like 10 to 20 different artworks from the people that you really love that are doing the things that you want to do. And just put your artwork up against them. Don't feel like crap and just say, okay, what elements do they have in their artwork that I want in mine? What are they doing there? How do they do that light? And how do they do that? And what you're inviting there is you're inviting positive dissatisfaction, because you are going to take a look at your artwork, not feel like crap, but you're going to recognize that you have growth, and you're going to look for what those growth areas are across all of your heroes there. And this allows you to A, first off, see the things that you have done, but B, also see that there's more that you can do. Another really great way that you can do this is if you put yourself against yourself like 5 years ago or even 1 year ago. Even that can be a huge motivator, okay? And don't feel bad about how poorly you did. Don't make fun of your work, y'all. Mind your words, because they matter, okay? And especially the words that you say to yourself locked up in here. Instead, take a look at where have you come from, where have you grown, and again, gamify yourself. See where did you level up, see where did your stats increase, see where did you accomplish quests that you wouldn't have been able to have at a lower level. How about that? Does that make more sense? Because if you actually accomplish this task of positive comparison and accomplishing positive dissatisfaction, where you are okay with where you are and you still recognize where you need to go, that gives you a clearer roadmap to success. So I want to go on a limb here and say that it's really, really hard to feel great about what you're doing with your art if you're not doing anything with your art. Are you the type of person who puts off things? Are you maybe the type of artist that avoids doing work? Are you somebody that like, oh man, you used to have so much motivation, but then it comes time and boom, there it goes. It just, woo, it just floats away, right? And are you somebody, just to name it, are you a procrastinator? If you're a master of anything, are you a master of procrastinating on your artwork? Because listen, it's really hard for you to actually get to that place if you're still working on this. But look, there's definitely a way for you to get past this. There's a way for you to grow through that. And there's a way for you to actually accomplish what you want, because you're never gonna feel happy with your art if you're not even making it. And to help you out with that, I made this entire video right here to help you combat procrastination. So go watch it. And if this helped you, please share this with somebody that you know and love. Thanks so much. See you next time.